lighting is a little bit different, but whatever. That's fine. That's good. So, you had asked me what was like my inspiration for this? Like, why did I want to do this?
Yeah, or tell me more about the series of conversations.
Right, okay. So, 2 weeks ago I did a video. The video was based on an article that this girl wrote. Well, by the time anyone watches this video, it will be like a while ago now.
Mm-hmm.
But it was on this article that this girl wrote that was about, she was like a Nigerian girl, and she wrote about how her grandfather was a slave trader in Nigeria.
Mm-hmm.
How they had gotten like generational wealth basically off of slave trading. Like,
wow.
Like that was something they like did. And how now they're trying to like kind of like reconcile that role that they played in slave trading.
Mm-hmm.
And also just like this like weird space that her family felt like they were even in as like they're black, like, you know, but they also like participated in the slave trade.
Mm-hmm.
And like just like there really has never been you know, like a reconciling for like white people.
Mm-hmm.
There's like also never really been a there's never really been a reconciling for like anyone that participated in the slave trade.
Yeah.
And so I did a video because a lot of people were requesting a video on that topic. They wanted to know what I thought about it. And that's basically what I said. I was like, you know, we talk a lot about like the diaspora and stuff. You know, oh, we're all black and this and that. I was like, but you have a lot of non-American black people that they have benefited, you know, from the slave trade. I was like, we could even continue going and continue talking about it. Mm-hmm. You have people that just, they've benefited from things. They're benefiting from, you know, black American culture.
Mm-hmm.
They're benefiting from us fighting for immigration rights, which was a large part of, you know, the civil rights movement.
Mm-hmm.
Just people benefiting from a lot of things. Oh, look, I'm cut off on the computer. Let me move it.
There we go.
Yeah, just people that are benefiting from a lot of things, and everyone's sort of like fine with it. Everyone's just sort of like whatever about it. And it kind of got me thinking about like what you and I have talked about before, and what we've like said we were gonna like talk about for like a while, about like how that also sometimes even plays out in like art spaces and art and activism spaces where you have people that might be white, or they might be non-black persons of color especially, that, or again like non-American blacks, you know, that are in these art spaces, or in these activism spaces, or in these academia spaces, and they're like pulling from black American, you know, art culture, activism culture, academic culture.
Yeah.
But like there's no black people in those spaces, you know? Like you might go into a space that's like an art space or an activism space, and it might be like full of like non-black persons of color, like Latinx people, or, you know, Southeast Asians or something like that. And then it's like you say, oh, well, who's everybody's inspiration? And they're like, oh, Kara James Marshall, and, you know, James Baldwin, and Toni Morrison, and Alice Walker. And it's almost like there's this like weird disconnect of like, but there's no black Americans in this space. And there doesn't even like have to be any black Americans in this space. It's like all you have to do is, you know, read the books or look at the work, or, you know, whatever, and just kind of like take what you want in terms of even like, you know, like praxis and stuff like that. You could just like take what you want, but you don't have to interact with any like, you know, black Americans or anything like that. And then there's also even like times where people in these spaces like even engage in like anti-black racism, kind of like without even knowing it, because while they are, you know, quote unquote embracing these like black American artists, for example, and like using them as inspiration and like using their work as a guide, they don't have any black Americans like in this space. They're not talking to us. They don't have really any idea So they're like still sometimes even engaging in like racist behaviors and stuff like that. Like we had talked about the whole guy that had like did the Black Panther thing. Which the backstory of that was we went to like a lecture public thing, and this guy who was like a non-Black POC artist, he had like recreated these portraits of leaders in the Black Panther Party. Like, number one, the portraits themselves have been taken by like a Black American photographer that he like couldn't get a hold of to work with him. So like, number one, he just decided, I'm just gonna like recreate it myself. I'm just gonna like, you know, claim this work for myself. And then he like cut out the Black American, like the Black Panthers, he like cut them out and like left the silhouettes. So it was just very weird, or like erasure. Like you're using the work, but you're like erasing. You're quite literally, like you're fucking erasing, like the Black Panthers. And then he had like installed it with these like mirrors, and the whole point was supposed to be like, you know, anybody could be a revolutionary and stuff like that. But it's like not anybody could be a Black Panther. Like not everybody could be a Black Panther. And I even think that some other stuff that I've been thinking about in terms of these conversations is even this idea of almost like anybody can be a Black American, and like anybody can be Black, and like anybody can have our experience, anybody can have our culture, but then at the same time it's like not everybody has our history here. And I know like you, for example, like you work in like multimedia, you know, mixed media, and you do like your quilts and stuff, and I know that that's like heavily influenced by history, by culture, by your, you know, sort of specific experience as a Black American, as a Black American artist. So it's kind of like weird. It's like a weird space of which other people have talked about, hypervisible invisibility.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I wanted to start.
Gotcha. Yeah, I've had some conversations and thought about the ways that like, or it can feel really frustrating the ways that like, it feels like everyone gets to have Black American culture. Like when people were upset about, or I was with some folks and we were watching a Janet Jackson video, the one, maybe it's like If I Was Your Girl, and it has a very like kind of,
Not
like,
the one where her boob falls out?
not that performance, but the one, it's like old,
Yeah.
and it's got kind of like an Orientalist like theme.
Vibes, yeah.
Yeah, that's like, you know, maybe you fucked up, or just like, I don't know. Black Americans and cultural appropriation is a weird thing for me because it's like so much of what we produce people can take and run with, and it's not a problem. But then if we're like interacting with something, sometimes people will be hypercritical. But you know, as you're saying the things that you're saying though, something that I'm thinking about and that I've thought about before and would like to explore with different work is like even within Black Americans, right? Like there's this assumption like that we all have access to this like common culture or whatever, but you know,
like, do we?
But do we? Because it's like, you know, Black American culture in like New Orleans is going to be really different than it is in Oakland.
Right.
And like, I think that like conversations and playing off things is cool, but also the class thing, you know, where it's like, so in those art spaces too, where there's not necessarily, there might not be a lot of Black people, but then the Black people, if there are usually folks like myself that are like, have a middle class background, or, you know, maybe like mixed Black people, white passing Black people, who will then, you know, make art or take on art forms that are, yes, traditionally Black American, but are actually traditionally like working class,
right,
Black American cultural production. And so that's something I think about too, because like I definitely think that, yeah, and even the conversation, even what you're saying about the Nigerian family who had slave trading in their background, I've been thinking about the ways that middle class, I was thinking this because of Michelle Alexander's book. The New Jim Crow.
Yes.
Because there's something where she's talking about how, you know, people use middle class black people, which are the minority.
Mm-hmm.
They use them to be like, oh, well, anybody, any like disenfranchised black person should be able to
pull yourself up by
pull
your
yourself by your
bootstraps.
bootstraps. If this person is a black lawyer, if Obama was the president, then anyone, you know what I mean? So there's this way that like the like financial privilege or access that a black middle class person has had gets used for it to be okay or something, to, that other people don't have access to things, or that other people are, that, you know, black people are incarcerated like crazy because, you know, you should be able to go on this route or whatever. So that's something I've been thinking about too. And I try to think about that stuff. But like I was a rapper for a while, like a long time ago.
Oh, yeah. What was your rap name?
My Coco Slim.
Coco Slim.
Yeah, it was a group of like.
Don't steal that. And you're watching this.
It was like queer black lady rappers, and it was like dorky and cute. And like, I mean, I think it's fine that I did that. I just think it's just like, you know, just things to think about.
Right.
Not like I'm saying like, no one should do nothing in terms of like black Americans consuming or creating black American culture, but like I've seen, you know, like really light skin or white passing artists who then will like make art about black experiences that I know are not their experiences.
Right. Like I know you didn't.
I know that stuff is, I know that like your family is not like, you know, like a Southern Baptist black family or whatever. You know what I mean? Or I know like that you probably don't experience being, you know, like sure, black people, even light-skinned black people experience all kinds of prejudice, but colorism is real, and like people who are darker skinned, who have both black parents and have dark skin, are going to be treated differently than someone who is mixed and black, you know? And so sometimes, I don't know, yeah.
I mean, that's like another reason why I kind of wanted to like start talking about this and like talking to people, is also because I feel like there are like a lot of different types of like American blacks, and I also do feel like we're like also lumped all together when there are like black people in the Midwest have like their own thing, you know, like a lot of black people in the South have their own thing, and then again like you even have like Southern enclaves, like Louisiana, New Orleans culture is not the same as like Gullah Geechee culture in like North Carolina, like and then you have like New York culture, which is like totally not the same as like West Coast like LA culture, which is also really not the same as like Oakland, Northern California, Bay Area
and
sort
all
of
these
culture.
things are like, you know, our artists from these different areas have conversations with each other. These cultures influence each other, and there's exchange, and that's cool. But also, you know, like people complain about Drake, the way I have a soft spot for him.
Really?
Even though he's
I hate him.
I mean, he's very annoying and problematic, but I have a soft spot for him because he's like, I don't know. I
feel like Drake is a culture vulture.
Yeah, he is. He totally is. So it's like, I think it's weird and problematic the way he's like, okay, now I'm this. Now I'm this. And now I'm
like
getting, do that.
And like even getting into what you were just saying, even about like some like biracial, I feel like there's like some foreign privilege with Drake, him being Canadian. There's like some biracial light skin privilege happening there. I feel like there's a classist element. I felt this way during the whole like Drake and like Meek Mill beef, for example. I feel like there was a lot of people like throwing in like their 2 cents, like, and based off of like there was like some classism and like some colorism shit going on of like, in my opinion, of like, you know, Meek Mill is like, he's like more rough, quote unquote, like rough around the edges, like he's from the streets, like he's from the hood, he's from Philly, he's dark skinned, he's like an American black, he has like 2 black parents, like I saw a lot of like people talking about, you know, the way that Meek was talking, and I can't understand him, and he doesn't enunciate, it's like too much yelling, and you know, some real like broke nigga from the streets, like nobody gotta listen, versus like Drake, who's like a very much more safe artist. he's Canadian, he's an actor that people know from this like children's show, you know. He has like a white Jewish parent, so he can like, there's kind of this idea that, you know, Drake can like move in spaces in a different way than somebody like a Meek Mill. And I think there's like something real there. Like I think there's something like, I don't know, like there's something to that.
Yeah, I definitely think that like it's no coincidence that Drake being mixed, being light skinned, having been in this like, being in, you know, in Degrassi, feels safe, that he's like as popular as he is.
He's
like,
I feel like he's Canadian. He's not, you know, one of us.
Yeah, so like you know, he's like poised to be this like mainstream crossover huge hit. And then I also, because of those things for sure, which is like fucked up, and then also I'm just kind of like, yeah, like for me he kind of represents the ways that amongst these kinds of cultural exchanges, the part where, so there's the problematic parts, and then there's the slippery areas where it's like, what is authentic anymore? We're all performing these like, you know, personalities that are really constructed and aren't really real, and like, so there's this kind of like ironic, funny way that I'm like, oh yeah, Drake, that's like most of.
So you're not really taking him seriously.
No, I like him because he's like, the things that are obnoxious about him, I don't know, it's like Seinfeld or something.
That's what I mean. It's almost like satire.
Yeah, where it's like,
he's like a satire of a rapper.
Yeah. And like you're kind of like, I don't know, like the ways he's annoying. Like he's such a sad boy, you know. It's like emo rap, and like I relate to that because I like emo music. So I'm like, oh, you're just gonna whine about like girls being mean to you, or like you're gonna whine about. So it's like I like him in this, I don't know. Kind of
my thing with Drake, though, also, is I feel like Drake, in a lot of ways, opened the door for a lot of fucking frauds. I don't know how else to put it. Like, I feel like there's way more just like how you said it's a slippery slope. Like, yes, it is a slippery slope. But I definitely feel like Drake, like, pushed us over the edge and like down the fucking slope, because like Drake came, and then all of a sudden all this stuff, it was just like, well, like all of us, I felt like all of a sudden after Drake, like all this type of shit became fine. Like it's fine that like he doesn't write, he has ghostwriters, it's fine, and it's fine that like half of the shit that he's talking about is like, it's literally like made, you know, like made up. Like we know for a fact that it's made up. Like, we know for a fact that, like, you were on Degrassi, you were, like, a child star. Like, we know for a fact that, like, you did not start from the bottom. Like, that's a lie. Like, we know. But he kind of opened the door for a lot of, like, well, I like the music, so it's fine. I like, you know, I like the art, so it's fine. I don't care, really. And so then I kind of feel like you have a lot of other artists, and even a lot of like non-black artists that are kind of like black adjacent, you know, they're kind of like close enough. They're, you know, they're sliding under the radar. And it's just sort of this like, well, who really cares? Like, who really cares?
I know, it's wild. And I saw some video that was like, this guy was like, oh, I bet you in like 50 years, most of the popular hip-hop artists won't even be black. And I was like, I believe it.
I believe it. I believe it.
And it sucks. But I don't know if I could pin all of that on Drake. I understand.
I feel like Drake opened, the door was a little bit open. Drake was like, you know how when the door's like this much open, so you like squeeze through? No, Drake was like, pushed it through. And I just do feel like, I feel like there's, especially like at the right now, I feel like there's like a push for like a lot of foreign artists that are doing quote unquote like traditionally black music or black American music, and that's even like regardless of race. The like the British like Blue-Eyed Soul, like the British like Blue-Eyed Soul thing, and like the Adeles and the like all like almost like a wave of people that kind of like came out of nowhere, and then you also started having like this influx of like black British singers or biracial singers like the LMAs and the Georgia Smiths and people that have even said themselves, like LMA even like said herself, like I could not get on in Britain, I couldn't get on in the UK, I couldn't get on until I came to America. Like I came to America and I and she sings her song in like an American accent, and it's like she's viewed a certain type of way here because she's British. When you have like American black artists that might be doing that exact same type of thing, and this doesn't have to be even just limited to like singing, doing that exact same type of thing, artists that are like even in our own mediums, but it's just not like, it's not an anomaly when it's sort of like, oh yeah, all black Americans can play basketball, like all black Americans can fucking sing R&B. Like obviously this is not true, but like the commonality of stereotypes or whatever, well, all black Americans can do these things, so it's not something that's like worth blowing up.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
But then when you get like a British artist or a foreign artist, it's exotic. Like it's exotic when you have a different type of artist. And I even feel that way about visual art and a lot of like mixed media art and a lot of non-black artists and foreign black artists as well that they borrow. And I guess it's kind of like weird. It's weird in art, especially. It's weird because like there's nothing new under the sun in terms of like inspiration. But I definitely feel like there's a lot of like I don't want to say deliberate, like as if people are like, well, yes. But a lot of, I don't think people are, number one, I don't think people are as like unaware as they act about it. I think there is like an element of awareness to what is going on, and I think there's a lot of people that are doing it anyway. And even getting into what you were talking about before about people that are kind of like using and even like glamorizing, let's say like a hood aesthetic or a ghetto aesthetic or a certain type of aesthetic that like for a fact. Like I've noticed that also. Like there have been some visual artists that I've like followed on Instagram that I have like unfollowed. I know that seems like a weird example, but because whatever like their aesthetic or whatever, I felt like that shit was making me fucking uncomfortable. Like why am I seeing fucking, I'm trying to think of an example right now. Like, why am I seeing like long fingernails, but like in this particular setting or like glamorous? Like, why am I seeing like I do remember seeing one that was like Bloods and Crips. So it was like they were like doing the B for like the Bloods, but they had like superimposed like some Burberry shit, like as if it was a Burberry ad, and like some C Crip shit, and then they had like superimposed like a Chanel ad. I was like, this is a little bit weird. Like we're getting a little bit almost into commodification. I don't know. You like
I mean, I think that I don't know if it's because of like the lack, some kind of heartbreaking lack of cultural context that Black Americans come from in some ways. I mean, we have our history. We have our history here. We have our history that's left over from the continent, that stuff that's been passed down, but there's something about that break in our heritage, that I think and what it's been like to be Black in like a majority white country. There's something about that has like lent to Black Americans being these like extraordinary cultural producers, and we make fucking awesome shit. You know what I mean? The whole world is like inspired by it. The whole world is inspired by it. The way I feel about it is like Black people in other places who their experiences are similar, I feel like pretty fine about that. You know what I mean? Like I remember the first time I heard a like British rapper, and I was just like, what? No way, dude. And then I was like, okay, sure. I'm down for it.
You warmed up to the idea.
Like French rap, I was like, no. And then I warmed up to it, and I'm kind of like, yeah, like we're all Black. But then when I heard that video, but then there is definitely the thing, right, of like non-American Black people shitting on American Black people, of like Caribbean Black people British black people, continent black people shitting on American black people, and that fucking sucks and is wrong and is fucked up. Especially if you're gonna be inspired by and like, or inspired by / imitate parts of our culture. But then it also just feels like this inevitability to me or something, that everyone wants the things that we're making. It feels like this weird inevitability. So what
do? We just say like, all right?
I mean, I guess I feel like we call it out when people are being fucking doo-doo about it. You know what I mean? Like, if you're gonna be inspired by the culture, be about it, right? Contribute to the cause, right? Like, don't shit on people,
right?
You know, but if you're,
I feel like this idea of like contributing, keeps coming up, of people that take and take and take, but don't contribute.
Yeah, and I think that there are examples of like, you know, like Black Lives Matter in Canada, Black Lives Matter in the UK, like of black people other places being inspired by something that's going on in the States in a way that's generative and contributing. But then in terms of like music and art stuff, but then so back to the class thing though, it's like, what's worse, right? Like if there's someone who is British but maybe they're actually from the hood, and that's what they're repping is like an American version of that, versus like a class privileged black American person who's repping that, like which one
is worse?
You know what I mean?
Me personally, I think I would still say the British one is worse, just because I don't know what a British hood is. So like, I don't know if there are enough similarities for, like, your version of hood might not be the same as like my version of hood. So you might also even still be like pretending, you know? I don't know. Like I have another example. Like, so in my video about LMA, because I did a video on her, somebody left a comment that said, because we were talking about, you know, like foreigners and Americans and also like colorism. Somebody had said like, well, I would prefer foreigners or black Brits, because that specific one was about like British people. I would prefer Brits like Naomi Harris, who played the mom in Moonlight. I don't know if you saw Moonlight. She's like British. Or Letitia Wright, who was Shuri in Black Panther. You know, they were like, well, I would prefer you know, darker skinned Brits. They were like, number one, I prefer darker skinned Brits like that over like LMA, who's like biracial or whatever. And then they were like, and I would also prefer a Naomi Harris or a Letitia Wright who is like fully black, which was like the word that they used, fully black, over a biracial, you know, mixed American like J. Cole. And I was like, for me personally, I would prefer a biracial mixed black American like J. Cole that like clearly has like a grasp on things, like a handle on things, than a foreigner who, you know, kind of maybe just so happens to be like darker skin. Like we do have an issue with colorism for sure. Let's like deal with American colorism before we start like importing in, you know, foreign blacks and like automatically calling it better. Like I don't know if I automatically believe that like even in your example, like I don't know if I automatically believe that like, oh, the foreign person that's fully black or the foreign person that's like from a hood over there is like better than a person from here that most likely might still have a better handle on American racism. Because I also feel like this is something we don't talk about enough either. Like racism manifests differently, and you know, like yes, we are all black, but racism manifests differently. It manifests differently in different countries, in different areas. It manifests differently for men and women. It manifests differently for, you know, skin tone. Like it manifests differently for hair texture. You know, it manifests differently in different ways. So I'm just like really leery of I feel like our conversations and a lot of our conversations about race and activism and art and all these things have been kind of leaning towards like we're all the same and we're just like all experiencing the same thing and we're just like all experiencing racism and oppression in the same way. And I don't think that's true. And I also have concerns even about like even once you start like introducing like foreign blacks, for example, a lot of foreign blacks even their idea of like what is black is different than ours because of our history with American chattel slavery. Like we're sort of more or less all mixed here. Like we all have a slave master somewhere, you know, back in our lineage. So I don't even know how I feel about this concept of like, you know, Caribbeans or what, you know, West Indians or Brits or, you know, continental Africans that come here and they're seen as fully black or you know, real black, more black than us because we are mixed. We are.
Oh, I haven't encountered that.
You know, I've heard that. Like I've heard that's apparently that's like a whole thing. Like I always bring up this study that I read that like genealogists, they like studied like millions of like black Americans over time. It was like an extended study, and they did find that like your average black American has like between on average like 16 and like 25 or 30% of like Caucasian like European like blood, and that's with 2 parents, maybe 4 grandparents, you know. And I've literally seen people having conversations, having arguments where they say stuff like, well, Beyonce's not black.
Wow.
And people would be like, well, what do you mean Beyonce's not black? And they'd be like, oh, well, like look at how light she is, like there's no way she's like fully black. Or you know, Creole people are not really black, there's like too much white. It's like our history here, just even getting back to like the history and the way that the history impacts even our understanding of race, and even before we start getting into like the way that also impacts our art and our writing and our entertainment and our creativity, the stuff that we do, like our history is just weird here, like it's different. And I feel like we don't talk about it enough, and people just have all these different ideas even of like what does it mean to be black and what does it mean to be all these things, which is also why I start to find it a little bit weird the way that people grab bag on, you know, black American culture, because you know, when Beyonce is like fucking doing her little dance and shit like that, like, oh, everybody's loving it and everybody's imitating it or learning the routine or doing this or doing that. But like Beyonce is like an American black from the South that obviously like what she's doing is deeply rooted in her history and her culture. And then you would also have people that would turn around and be like, well, but she's not even black, like she's mixed and she's this and she's that. It's just very weird. It's like a very weird space.
It's a trip.
And a weird artistic space. Like I used to feel all the time like so visible but so invisible, which again is even part of why I wanted to like start having these conversations, because I even feel like I don't see enough black Americans even just talking about our own narrative and how do we feel about it.
I think that like blackness is a trip, man.
Blackness is a trip. Blackness is a fucking
like
trip.
Really special and powerful and beautiful, and also just like a fucking
mindfuck.
Yeah, because it's just like this created thing, but it's also like a real. You know what I mean? It's like race is a construct, but also like blackness is real. It's like this is the thing. You know what I mean? It's like my skin looks like this and black. That's the thing.
Like I'm black.
And it's a constructed thing that affects our material reality, so it's real in that way. And like
just like when people always say that, oh, so race is a social construct, it's not real. I always want to be like, okay, but like so is like money and like capitalism. Like, so are you gonna like not pay your rent? Can I just like not pay my rent and then tell my landlord like, listen,
I think that
it's a social construct, sir. Like I don't have to pay. You can't make me pay.
I think that fact gets used in weird, fucked up ways, for sure. But yeah, race is a trip. That's wild that people are like, oh, Americans are like Beyonce is not really black. Or I think I did see something on the internet about like Caribbean black people saying something about black Americans not really having.
Which is funny because, like, Caribbeans also, like, there was also chattel slavery in the Caribbean. Like, that's why there in the Caribbean.
There's like an idea that they're kind of like more pure.
Yeah, like that. There's an idea like that they're more pure.
In terms of blackness.
Stop getting into eugenics.
Yeah.
That's not even our thing.
That's
like
yeah. Like, I'm usually like on the one hand, I do want to have like I remember in that video I saw of you. You're like, oh, these are the people you want to like, you know, unite with or whatever for revolution or whatever. And it's like I'm a Pollyanna sometimes, and I do want to be like, oh, we're black. Like we have this like anti-blackness is a global fucking thing, and so it's in our best interest to like build with other black people. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But then also it is really important to talk about the specifics. Like our specific context, and within that too.
Back. Yes. Hey. Continue.
Yeah, and within that too, it's really important to talk about like colorism and like cis-sexism and all the different identities within blackness and class stuff, and how that changes. Those specificities determine what we need to talk about and work through in order for us to build together. So if people are kind of just like, I can do whatever and we don't need to talk about it, then that's definitely like no good.
Yeah. When you're around like foreign blacks, do you feel different? Would you say you feel different?
Foreign blacks is a very funny phrase.
Isn't it?
Do people say
it? Is. I say it.
You say that. That's funny.
I say it because I feel like it's easier.
Distinct.
It's distinct.
That's why I'll say sometimes half blacks or full blacks because I think it's funny, and also
I don't like being called African American.
Yeah.
I say all the time, like, please don't call me African American. You can call me a Black American.
Yeah, I prefer that too. Or I would just prefer black. I just like to be called black.
I also like to be called, as everyone knows, the DACS, which is descendant of American chattel slavery.
Oh, wow.
Because I feel like it's like good and specific.
Yeah.
It's like good and specific.
Yeah.
They're redoing the census in 2020, and a lot of people are pushing for like more ethnic.
I heard about that. Yeah. I think that when I was little, I think there is this feeling, like I was thinking about this, like someone who was Haitian or Trinidadian, like there's this pride that they have about their culture and about that nation. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like that nation state or whatever, that, for plenty good reasons, like, you know what I mean? Like in terms of Haiti especially.
We have,
plenty good reasons. But it is interesting the way that, like, I think when I was younger, I did kind of I almost wished that I was from one of those places so that I could say, I'm from there.
Right.
As opposed to, I think, if you're a Black American, there's not the same pride to be like, I'm from here. You know what I mean? It's not like, I mean, maybe you're like,
I'm
from...
Woo, America! Woo,
yeah, you're not
slavery!
Like, oh, I don't know. Maybe you're like, I'm from Louisiana, or I'm from Georgia, or whatever like that. But, and then me, like, my dad was in the military, so we moved around a bunch of places. So I don't really have a connection to any specific place here. I mean, Virginia, my parents live in Virginia. That's where I go visit them. But but still, I don't. So I think when I was younger, I did feel different around non-African American blacks because it felt like they had this like special, like the closest thing the diaspora was going to get to a homeland is like if you're from Jamaica or something like that. You know what I mean?
But that's what I'm saying too, though. It's funny, like, because they are only in Jamaica.
I know.
Because of slavery.
I know.
Just like how we're in America because of slavery.
Yeah,
so it's like, why is there such a stigma on us?
Yeah. But
it's not on people in the Caribbean?
I think that, like, I mean, my guess, I have no idea, but my guess is maybe because these were, like, islands that are majority black. There's a way that, like, their culture... I never thought
about it that way.
Yeah, so and also the parts of the culture that's been passed down from the continent is, like, maybe more intact in some ways. More pure? It's fucked up.
Less diluted?
Yeah, and so, there's this, like, way that it feels like you have more of a... People want to feel like they come from somewhere, and people want to know where they come from. And people want to claim a place, you know what I mean? For better or for worse, most people feel like that. And so I think when you're from those places, it feels like more of a place that feels like yours, as opposed to, like, even if you're from somewhere really specific here that has a specific Black American culture, like, Atlanta or New Orleans or something like that, when you go outside of that city, you know what I mean? Like, you're not trying to really claim maybe that other stuff.
Right.
It's like fucking scary rural Mississippi or some shit, I mean, I don't like the idea when people are like, oh, rural South is the only scary racist place. Anywhere is a scary racist place in America.
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to say that.
I mean, there's also like great Black American culture in Mississippi. There's like amazing Black American culture everywhere.
It's true. And it is fucked up. It is. I never really thought about when you say diluted or less pure, that does kind of like problematize the like idea of like it being more intact or something like that in this way that I hadn't really thought about.
I mean, and like somebody left a comment that I thought was really interesting that I think kind of like goes in what we're talking about, where they were like, you know, like, yeah, I was in the Caribbean, like we're majority Black as opposed to here where we are the minority.
Yeah.
I mean, and they also said, and I didn't know this, I like read up a little bit more about it, but they were like also a lot of the plantation owners in the Caribbean were like absentee.
Oh.
So like a lot of the plantation owners were like over in Europe, like in Britain, like, you know, maybe they had like a couple people like running shit, but like for the most part a lot of like the plantations and stuff were running themselves. Now there were overseers and people were definitely still getting like their asses fucking whipped and, you know, like it was still slavery. But it was just like less like intense maybe even than it was for us here in the United States. And so that also contributed to like some of the culture, a lot of like the cultural differences, because us being the minority, we literally have like everything for the most part stripped away from us and beaten out of us. Whereas when you're in the Caribbean, where you have a little bit more of like it's like an absentee parent, you're able to like retain, you know, they were able to like retain a little bit more. With us, in a lot of ways, we had to start from scratch. And then the other conversation that I had with my other friend, we were talking about how that also kind of led to what you were just saying about us being like creators and innovators, sort of because we had to be, like we had to.
It's like we took the scraps that had passed over and left over of like our culture and stuff. I mean, yeah, for sure. I think that, and it's that thing that what we were saying on the Instagram Messenger, where it's like there is definitely, I feel like, this idea that like Black people from other places are kind of like more special or something like that. But then also like, but then everybody wants to do what we do. It's like a weird... Yeah, it's a weird thing. But then it's also a weird thing because we're American and there's like American privilege when you travel. And the assumed like wealth or something, but then also when you're in the country, you can like the cops can be called on you for breathing.
A lot of people say we're treated better like outside of the U.S. than we are treated inside of it, which I think that when it comes to like Blacks that are like abroad, they have this idea almost that like the way we're treated abroad is like
how it
is here. And we're like, no, that is fucking incorrect. Like that's not how it is. So I also think that there's that also I feel like contributes to some of the, I almost feel like it's like a lack of empathy, or you know, even sometimes even like an outright animosity of like why almost like, well, they see the way that, let's say, Black Americans are treated you know, in England, Europe or something like that, and then it's almost like, you guys are treated so good, like why can't you get ahead in the United States? And it's like, that's not how it fucking is here.
I mean, in either direction, the like, I don't know, it breaks my heart. I remember, which I do think we should also say though, because even though as adults, right, I think that like non-American Blacks, there's a prejudice a lot of times, or I don't know if it's even a lot, but it's a thing. I know it's a thing.
It's a thing.
I remember being in getting food stamps when I was in New York and hearing like a person from the continent and a Caribbean talking about Black Americans and then being like ghetto and stupid and stuff like that. And I was like, wow.
Did they say something about you getting food stamps? Or this
no,
is like
no,
overheard?
They were there too, but they were just having a conversation about Black Americans being like, I don't even remember if it was like lazy or what, but some fucked up shit. And I was like, wow, that is painful. And I also remember being, you know, when you're younger, I remember like some other Black kids making fun of someone who was from the continent, and I was just like, I'm a little sensitive flower, so I was just like, oh, like I think I wrote.
Why can't we all just get along?
Like, why can't we just get along? And it's like, it's sad. It makes me sad more than anything. Like those comments about that you were reading from foreign Blacks about Black Americans, just really like oof. It just really hurt my heart.
I feel like a lot of foreign blacks, though, hold on to shit that's not that important. I know that's like fucking mean to say, but I kind of feel like how you said, like kids.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, I really don't see a lot now. I just really don't see this. Like, I really don't see a lot of adults. I feel like when we become adults, there's, as Black Americans, there's more of that feeling of
brotherhood.
Yeah. Or even that we are not special and like other people are. Now, as children,
we're like,
there's a lot of like childhood insults and like African booty scratcher and stuff like that. But I feel like those are childhood insults. Like, and even as and I never see that like continue into adulthood. And most of the childhood insults that I really even say that I see and hear are not. It's not like fuck you, you know, like it's not so intense. But I feel like a lot of people like take that to heart. And they get like a chip on their shoulder against
kind of
us.
the way like white people are like, black kids made fun of me.
They call me mayonnaise. and even the same type of way, like you call like a white person like mayonnaise. Or you say something like so light to them, like you can't dance, white people can't jump, and they be like, that's why you're a nigger. How do we get? We went from 0 to 100.
There's like a meme about that. It's like I love that. I think one of those memes that has the word nignog in it, which is hilarious.
Right, like how do we get? And I feel like a lot of like foreign blacks do the same thing. It's like
they're like, you're a ghetto nignog.
It's like, oh, African booty scratcher. They'd be like, that's why you have no home and your father is white. It's like, whoa.
You come from nowhere, nothing yet.
That's why you have no culture and you came from the dirt and your great grandmother was like raped by a white man. You'd be like, whoa, that escalated quickly. Like that really escalated. Like, and there's like a lot, I feel like, of like vitriol like towards us specifically, and it's really fucking weird.
I wonder what it'll be like. Although, you know, I have not been barely anywhere outside the States. I've been in the UK, I've been in Canada and Mexico, and I'm trying to go to Ghana with my family next year.
The tickets are so expensive.
We're doing like my mom started saving like last year kind of thing, but I have not been saving. We'll see if this works out. But yeah, my friends, I had some friends go to South Africa like a couple of years ago, or like all the people I've talked to, this has been artists. They go over Ghana, South Africa, and then they're like, oh, it's so amazing to be somewhere that's not majority white. You know what I mean? This is kind of like a different topic maybe, but it's related. But because I wonder what it will be like. You know what I mean? I wonder how people will relate to us. And I feel kind of nervous about it. But my friends who went to South Africa, they had like an amazing experience, and they're like, people were really like welcoming, and it seemed like people were kind of on this like, we're all black kind of thing. And I mean, I guess like, you know, I don't know, no matter how you cut it, there's gonna be some fucking assholes being dicks or whatever. And I hope it's the minority, you know what I mean? But I haven't kept up with like debates going on about the diaspora, you know, on Twitter or Facebook or whatever. I do remember when Black Panther came out, it did kind of, I was so excited about that movie. Like, I was so excited. Like, I felt like Christmas was coming. Whatever, I know, like, you know, like, representation's not going to save us, but I do think it's important. And I don't know, I was just excited. I was excited.
You're excited.
I was excited. And then I saw it, and I was like, this is good, but also it hurts my feelings. And
I feel like so many Black Americans had that reaction, and nobody talked about it.
I felt like I got kind of depressed after the first time I saw it, because I thought, oh, there's going to be some kind of like conversation about diaspora here. You know what I mean? And instead the conversation felt like, oh yeah, like the Black American is like
lost,
rude,
angry. Thank you.
You know,
I did not tell her to say that.
Just like
I said that, and
like
the people
sup,
were and people
sup, auntie. Like,
yes.
And then the solution is like he's gonna buy the ghetto. You know, like I was like,
yes.
But it's, you know, and I had to remind myself. I was like, oh yeah, this is like a Marvel movie. It's not
Disney?
gonna be. Yeah, it's a Disney movie. It's not trying to do something actually radical. It's like, you know what I mean? It's like liberal.
I know
media.
so many. I would say most of the fucking Black Americans that I know that I know personally that saw that movie walked away with that exact same feeling. Like my very best friend and I like talked about it, and she said this. She was like that. She was angry, like not even like depressed.
Yeah.
She was like pissed off, like on some like what the fuck did I just watch? Like she was like, I almost felt insulted.
Yeah, and it's intense because, you know, in the whole thing he's like trying to basically start a revolution, but he's the bad guy, and like it's like yes with violence, but it's because that's what's in the world.
Yeah.
And like it's very seductive. So that's what I felt really isolated.
I loved Killmonger. He was my favorite, but
yeah, I mean, he's like
I get where you're going with that.
But I mean, yeah. So some people, when I said this, they're like, no, they made him really like complex, and you did identify with him, and I was like, you identified with him, but he's still the bad guy.
He's the bad guy.
And he dies, and then, you know, there's that line that people felt very strong about, and that it was powerful. For some reason, it didn't reach me the same way. I just laughed at it.
I didn't enjoy that line.
I didn't enjoy that line. I was like, that's a lot. But
I personally felt like that line was a little bit fucked up because it's kind of like shitting on the people that didn't die, sort of. Like the last time that he said about like, oh, they knew that, you know, like death was better than bondage. Like that's kind of like shitting on.
Yeah, you're like, I guess I should kill myself.
Right, like you wouldn't be here if
some people didn't.
Decide to not kill themselves. Like no shade on anyone that like did kill themselves, but you know, whatever. It was a weird. Like I get the intent of the line, but I felt like it was like maybe not the best.
And it's just so seductive, right? Because it's like we're so many Black Americans and other Black diaspora. You know what I mean? Like I saw the stories about people in Brazil, like a group of Black folks doing this like trip to a fancy neighborhood to see this movie, and it was like a whole thing, and it meant so much. And,
right.
I
have such complex.
But then it's like it's so we're all so many of us are longing for this kind of like connection to the continent and longing for a cross diaspora connection, you know what I mean? And so
that gets also back to what are we getting back in terms of like across,
yeah, I mean, I think that anyway, so in terms of the movie, we're wanting that, and so they gave that to us, but it was in this package where it's like, okay, so like radical change is bad, and
Black Americans also got shitted on the whole movie.
Yeah, and it's like these, I don't know, just a lot of things, and the whole like the solution is like to like gentrify, for an outsider to like gentrify a neighborhood or whatever. I was like,
I had so many issues. Like on the one hand, I totally agree. Like I love that it made people like so happy.
Yeah,
I did like it in terms of like what it represented, like even like not like getting like not the movie itself, like the plot, whatever,
yeah,
but like what it represented in terms of like a fully Black cast and a Black writer and a Black director and a Black costumer and a Black hairstylist and you know, this huge gigantic budget and you know, like all of that stuff, like outside of the movie itself, like it could have been any movie, but like all that stuff, I liked. I was totally in. I was like totally down for it. Like I really respected that aspect of it. Like I respected like what Ryan Coogler did. Like I love supporting like Black writers and directors. I thought that shit was like fucking cool. I loved how happy it made people also, Black people. But in terms of like the actual plot of the movie and some of like the underlying themes of the movie as a Black American, and especially because the movie was like pushed so hard as this like Black representation. I also felt disappointed, and like I said, like almost every Black American that I know felt disappointed or felt sad or even felt like outright angry and insulted. Like a lot of the underlying themes were like radical Black revolution is bad, like you know, violence is bad, but it's sort of like violence is the way of life, like especially considering like here in the United States, like pretty much everything that we have almost has been like gotten through violence, like and through wars and shit like that, and we can like get into, you know, violence and wars and imperialism and how do we feel about that?
Or like violence versus nonviolence.
Or violence versus nonviolence. You know, Malcolm X versus Martin Luther King. Like, it's like, obviously those were some parallels to T'Challa versus Killmonger, Martin Luther King versus Malcolm X. But yeah, I definitely felt like there was a lot of like, you know, portraying of us as like angry and uncouth and rude and you know, like every time they showed Killmonger, like this trap music started like playing and selling my fucking mixtape on SoundCloud. Like there was just a lot. It was a lot of like, and I felt like Ryan Coogler, who is a Black American, I felt like his whole perception, direction, his whole view, his whole framing of the movie did come from this place of we're lost. We need to look for our roots. We need to reconnect. You know, we are bad, and we need to try and like be better. And the way that we are better is this way, you know, like this go back to Africa way, or this, you know, or we open up our borders, like how you were kind of saying, like the gentrification, you know, like we open up and we share and culture and this and that. Like there, I did feel like there, I agree, like I felt that, and I didn't like it, and I really didn't like it.
Yeah, and I don't even know, like I'm not gonna say like, what's his name, Ryan Coogler?
Ryan Coogler, yeah.
Yeah, like I don't know if it's like just kind of, I think some of those things when they happen, it might not even be necessarily like he was like, this is what I want to happen. Like, this is the American part. He's like going with the story of Black Panther, but then making these decisions, and all this stuff is just in the air, right? Like we're all internalizing this shit, and then it just is like a machine, like it just kind of happens,
right?
And then
I don't know. I also even feel like even getting into this idea which I've like talked about before, I feel like it's a weird idea that we like have to go back to Africa, or we have to reconnect with our roots, or that we are lost. For anyone that feels that way, that like wants to do that, like I don't have nothing against that, but like me personally, I don't feel that. I know a lot of people that don't feel that way. I know a lot of people that kind of feel like, well, we're here now. We've been here a really long time. Like we built this country. We created our own culture. You know, we sort of created our own roots, you know, and that's fine. There's almost this idea of like that's a bad thing, or
I mean, I don't think it's a bad thing, but it's like I definitely have like a lot of heartbreak, because 400 years is not a long time. Like America's really young. You know what I mean? Like America's like a little baby. This is not.
I think 400 years is a long time, though.
I mean, 400 years is a long time in terms of like a human life, sort of. But when you think about countries that have been around, like England, for however long, or when you think about the way some people talk about their heritage or their legacy, it goes back hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. You know what I mean? And so I definitely have a lot of heartbreak that I don't know, you know, where my ancestors are from, or like what cultural traditions.
Can I ask you a question?
Practice. Yes.
What do you think that knowing that would do for you personally?
I think that it would give me a sense of rootedness. Yeah. I mean, I think that like, I think knowing that, I think just the way someone can be like, if they grew up, it's kind of analogous, right, to just like in my lifetime as someone who's moved around a bunch of different places, whose parents moved away from where the majority of the family was for different financial opportunities, and to try to like, you know, what's the phrase? Oh, be financially mobile, upwardly mobile, whatever.
Mobile, yeah.
Like, I think that there's a lot of, because of that, I don't feel connected to a place. You know what I mean? I don't feel like rooted anywhere. And that doesn't feel good to me. And I think similar to that on a longer term scale is the feeling I have sometimes about like being a part of the Black diaspora and like a descendant of enslaved Africans. You know what I mean? Like I don't think in a longer scheme of things, I don't think 400 years is that long. And like this, while we built this country, like we built the infrastructure for this thing that's also kind of like, I don't know, garbage in a lot of ways. And like land that's not ours. You know what I mean? It's like other people's land. And like, I would like to be somewhere where like most of the people are black and there's like a longer, a like more present, like the presence of a black cultural history that is longer. I don't know. I'm kind of losing my words, but
I feel like, slavery went on for like 400 years, and it's been like an additional 153 years since then, so let's just say roughly 553 years, or round that up to 600 years, whatever, however.
From the very start of it.
From the very start of it to now.
Yeah.
Right, like now, this moment.
Yeah.
I feel like that's long enough. Like in terms of, compared to like Rome. Okay, like no, it's not that long, but I definitely feel like that's long enough that we did create a culture. I think that there's a lot of, I don't know if brainwashing is the right word, but I'm going to use that word, brainwashing. I think that there's a lot of like brainwashing and in our upbringing that we're supposed to feel worthless, that we're supposed to feel like we're not shit, that we're supposed to feel like we don't have shit, that we're supposed to feel like we're on the bottom as Black American descendants of slavery, that we're supposed to just be worthless, and that until we get this connection to Africa or to the diaspora or, these quote-unquote roots, that we are nothing. And I just feel like I just reject that. I just reject that. Like, I reject that. I'm not necessarily saying that that's what you're saying, but just in general, like, I reject that whole narrative. I feel like I do come from somewhere. Like, I do come from people that survived, that are survivors, that are creators, that are innovators, that made a way literally where there was no way. And instead of feeling this, like, shame, I feel like we're supposed to feel shame. I feel like white people want us to feel ashamed. I feel like other Black people throughout the diaspora want us to feel this shame. And instead of feeling shame, number one, I feel like if there is any shame, like, it's not mine. It's definitely not mine.
Yeah.
And number two, I just feel like I come from survivors that made a way out of nothing. And I feel like if we're going to stick with the number of 600 years, I feel like that's enough time that, to me, it's almost insulting to jump backwards, because there's a lot of people that love to say, like, well, before we had history before we got here, and it's like, yes, totally, like, we totally did have history before we got here, but we also had history here that we don't even, like, fully all the way know and comprehend, like.
Yeah, and I think the loss, that's a part of the loss too. I think 600 is too much. Because that would put us at like 14. But we don't
well, I said 553 would be, I mean, if it was 400 and then plus 153 years, because it's been 153 years since the end of slavery. So that would be 553 exactly.
Yeah. I'm not going to.
So I'm saying if you wanted to stick with 553, if you wanted to. We could say 553.
I'm not going to argue about time, but. And I am like. It's not like. For me, it's not about. We're fucking miracles, you know what I mean? Like, despite anti-Blackness in America, whatever, wanting us to feel all the different ways that involve us, like, not feeling like humans, not deserving of humanity, that, I do reject that. I don't believe that, but I do also, like, I think it's really common in lots of different cultures that people come to know themselves also through cultural traditions, through knowing their ancestors and knowing stuff about their ancestors. And like, I think that a part of chattel slavery was even some of the cultural traditions that were happening during the however many hundreds of years are not as intact as they could have been because of the situations people were in, you know what I mean? And how painful it was. Like, my grandmother never wanted to talk about what her life was like because she was born in 1910 in the South, you know what I mean? And I'm sure she experienced a lot of traumatic things. She didn't want to talk about it. Right. So I don't really have even to extended family, I don't have much of a connection to like what that history is.
Right.
So maybe that it's like maybe a specific individual thing, but like I draw a lot of inspiration from, like I'm not a practitioner of like an African based spirituality like Ifa or something, but I kind of like flirt with it. At some point when I find the right teacher, I probably will get more involved in that. And like I pray to my ancestors every day.
Do you feel like that's appropriate? Because there are some people that would say that's inappropriate. You don't know what you're doing.
The flirting with it?
Yeah, like that's not your culture. Like that.
I think that there is the majority of people understand that like that religion and different forms of it have made its way to all over where Black people are.
Mm-hmm.
That's undeniable. You know what I mean? So like there's no being like it's inappropriate because it's like there's direct lines. I'm not, maybe it wouldn't be Ifa that I would get into. Maybe it would be, like there's a woman who kind of practices like some of that stuff, but she also is queer and eclectic and has an eclectic spiritual practice. She's a Black elder, and she's someone who I've wanted to work with, but I don't think it's inappropriate, no, because it's been a thing. You know what I mean? Like conjure.
I mean, I just know
root work is
I've seen people say they feel like it's inappropriate. Like Black Panther, people were like wearing dashikis and stuff, and there were like some people that there were like some continental Africans that felt some type of way that felt like it was inappropriate. I know people have said like bringing up Beyonce again, like like when Beyonce like wears the yellow and does like the water thing, that's like the whole reference to Ocean, and is that appropriate?
I think people would maybe wonder if that's appropriate, not because she's American, but whether or not, because it's like whether or not she has a relationship to those spiritual traditions is what I would think people were.
But I mean, what is a relationship for us, for Black Americans? Like do we have?
Yeah, there's plenty of Black Americans in the South and other places who practice these things that have been passed down.
I'm sorry, I said that wrong. Not to say that there are not people that don't have relationships. There are people that do have relationships, but I mean for the people that do not have relationships, like to anything, like kind of getting to what we were talking about like creating new, stuff.
So would it be appropriate for them?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's appropriate, and I know that there's a lot of flack that, or like I know that there's like conversations about Black Americans appropriating all sorts of things from continental Africans, and that kind of goes back to the conversations that you were reading. You know what I mean? I feel like is related, and that stuff. It's like for sure. I'm sure there's like a lot of people who are like, oh, that's fucked up, and it's like I don't know.
I don't wear dashikis because I don't think it's appropriate.
I don't wear dashikis, but I do use. I use different kinds of African textiles in the art I make. But a part of the content of the art is about that like loss and about like a not.
So you feel like you give context.
Kind of. Artistic, it's abstract, but for me, there's a artistic context. But I don't think it's necessarily inappropriate. I think that there's like better practices than some other ways to like take on some of these things. But I don't have a problem with people doing that kind of stuff. I think that it's really fucked up to. I mean, I know you gave the 600 years, and you're saying 600 years isn't that long.
I mean, does it have to be that if you don't want?
But I think it's fucked up to. I'm not going to limit my history to just being here. I'm thankful for this history here. You know what I mean? Because no other way would I be this person.
Yeah.
So I'm thankful for that history. And like I'm thankful and like in awe and inspired by the culture that Black Americans have made and our history here, but I also feel connected to something longer. You know what I mean? And I think that I
think a lot of people feel the way. I personally don't.
Yeah. But
I think a lot of people feel the way that you do.
Yeah, I mean, like I talk to my ancestors, and I feel like I have ancestors that I talk with. Like I have a great grandfather who was a root worker, right? And I feel like I'm influenced by him, and he was probably influenced by stuff that's a more direct relationship to the, wherever we were taken away from. You know what I mean? So this is like, And I feel like there's people with me who are from a long time ago, as well as from more recent times. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, I really believe that shit. So I think it's fucked up to be like, oh no, your history is just this 600 years or whatever. Mm-hmm. Like, for sure, we've made this beautiful, all sorts of brilliant, complex history, culture in that time period, but it's not like there wasn't stuff before too.
Mm-hmm. For me, it's like, there definitely was, I mean, like, obviously there was stuff, like, there's really no denying, like we didn't just, like, spontaneously fucking appear here. So, like, obviously, like, there was stuff before. Just for me personally, I just don't feel, like, how people say, like, even, like, we can get even more abstract if how people want to get, like, you know, DNA testing, because they want to know, and they feel that urge, or like they feel, you know, like they feel it, you know. I don't feel it. I feel very much okay with, I think maybe I just like made peace with it. I kind of feel like there are things that were lost, and even like to say that they were lost feels like very passive, like they were very deliberately taken away, you know. And I kind of like made my peace with that, and I kind of just got into the mindset of I am who I am. I am a product of what I am a product of. I am here because of, and also in spite of, the slave trade. And I choose to, and again, like, this is just me personally, like I do a hidden figure series, like every other Wednesday. I do like a hidden figure, hidden Black woman in history. And I don't even limit it just to like Black Americans. I do like all different, but even when I do like a Black American woman that like did something amazing that I just like never knew about, like I even feel, so maybe this is just like the anthropological, like historian aspect of it, like I just even feel like we do have history here that is hidden from us, or that we just don't even know about, and like people don't care, and instead of like caring, or you know, caring to know and just even like learn more about our history here and what we've done here and our culture here and stuff, it's like the more accepted or more prevalent idea of like back to Africa, or like we had more history. I know that's just like the common phrase, you know, or like, you know, we had history before here, and it's like, yes, we did. We had history here too. And I don't think that like one is right and or one is
and
wrong.
I think there's some in between area too,
like,
right?
I don't,
because like, and I think that people not caring, probably, in my opinion, is more like there's a lot of trauma, you know,
like
what
a defense mechanism.
Yeah, like a defense mechanism. Like my grandmother, you know what I mean? It's not like she didn't care about like her life experiences or the history, the things that she'd been through, but it's painful.
Right.
And like a lot of the contexts of our achievements in this country, the contexts are painful ones.
Right.
Which like I don't want to deny that, and I want to hold that, but I think that might be for some of the reason that people don't care. You know what I mean? It's more of a just like
not even like I can't.
Yeah, you know, or like I'm just gonna move forward or whatever, and like there's definitely do Black Americans also like I think have, and any colonized people have like a sometimes fantastical idealized version of like pre-slave chattel slavery, pre-colonization. Yes, but also I think that fantasy is rooted in really real, valuable things that were lost. But also, I don't think that those things were totally lost, and I think that you know, significant parts of the culture that we've created here is like really clearly you can connect to like the culture of other diasporic Black people. You know what I mean? Where you're like, oh, this dance looks like that dance. This story is like that story. Like I'm really into Black folk tales and
like Virginia Hamilton.
Yeah, exactly. So in those stories, right? Like in the end, they'll be like, oh, there's a version of this story in Ghana. There's a version of this story in South Carolina. There's a version of this story in Brazil. You know what I mean? And so it's like, even in our history that's here, there's these like really almost
little nuggets,
these lines that go back. You know what I mean? And I'm really interested in that. Like I'm really interested in like the folk tales that are here and there and over there and.
Because you said it helps you feel grounded.
Or rooted. I think it's like, I think that people wanting to have like, okay, so I've been doing this generative somatics training thing, and they do these centering exercises that involve like, it's about like trying to be more in your body. I'm not going to go into all of what that's about, but in the centering exercises, they have this thing where you're, you know, pulling yourself up and thinking about dignity and trying to fill yourself up horizontally and thinking about connection and then thinking about depth and like what your body feels like inside, and then you can put your hand back and you think about where are all the places that I've been, and then you can think about your ancestors and where they've been, and like, and then you imagine your center extending forward with a certain purpose. I mean, you know, I got Mad Sankofa's tattooed on me. You know what I mean? It's like having that connection does help me feel solid and moving forward. And I think that like, but I also am relatively comfortable. Like there's a lot of like gratitude and awe about Black American culture and Black Americans, and also like a lot of heartbreak from the trauma that is a result of chattel slavery, from the trauma that is like not knowing where that goes back to. But I'm pretty comfortable with being in between those things, you know what I mean? And being in a space where it's like, yes, I'm here and I have this culture here, and there's like question marks there, and then there's some things that actually aren't question marks because there's really clear lineages, you know, to now.
Yeah. No, I agree. My only thing with that, which I do agree with that, I just have an issue, and I feel like I see this a lot, and I don't know, I also feel like this is kind of becoming more prevalent in general, like post-Trump, of just like alternative facts. I also feel like I see a lot of, and I think this plays into like a bigger this ideology of like Black American culture, just belonging to everybody and being like up for the taking. I see a lot of like, well, kind of like, let's say you said like, oh, there's like a dance and I see it here and I see it there and I see it here and I see it there. Yeah. Whereas I feel like I'm starting to hear much more than I heard previously of like, well, this really is not your culture, it belongs to like Africa. Like you really got this dance from Africa. Like, oh, you're really like copying Africa, or you're really copying Jamaica, or you're really doing this, or you're really doing that. Like almost again like a claiming. It's weird because sometimes I feel almost like slavery is like still going on with people like claiming Black Americans and like claiming our bodies and like claiming the shit that we fucking say and do, and like this I don't know if this is just like a subconscious like worldwide idea. Like I really don't know. I really need to like sit down and think about it a little bit deeper, because like I really do sometimes feel like as if slavery is still going on and people like still feel like this entitlement, like as if they own us. And I even feel like I see it like replicated in this rhetoric of like, well, you guys do that dance, you fucking twerk, they shake their asses in West Africa, that doesn't belong to you, like that belongs to Africa type of conversation. And I even feel like in a lot of ways it starts even getting into like really like dishonest type of like alternative facts, like the example that I keep thinking of that I've been like using is like a gramophone, right? Like a gramophone is like the record and like the big shit or whatever. Like a gramophone was like an early music player, and so like a gramophone led to like a vinyl record player, which led to like a Walkman, which led to, you know, a CD player, a Discman, which led to MP3s, which led to an iPhone. But it's like an iPhone is not a gramophone, like a CD player is not a gramophone. Like we're not carrying gramophones around. Like, are there, you know, like a sandwich is not a hot dog. Like, are there roots? Are there nuggets? You know, are there like, yes, but like, what is this attitude of like that Black Americans belong? Like we can't have anything, and like even the stuff that we do have like still has to belong to other people. Like we belong, like first we belong to white people, and like now we belong to like the diaspora. You know, like there's this sense of ownership that I think people really still feel. Like it has not gone away. I mean, and white people too, like them too. Like it has not gone away. And I do think that even plays a part in like, again, like how comfortable people feel with like picking up and putting down our culture and like partaking in this and partaking in that. It's like we don't even have no ownership over ourselves. Like everybody still owns us. Like I don't know what this like emotional slavery, this creative slavery, like we're still slaving away. Like it's like a very weird dichotomy. It's like a very weird thing, and like I really do feel like almost like ownership. Like people feel like they own us, and they own the things that we produce, and it, like I've even witnessed arguments, like I haven't really gotten into any arguments about this, but like I have even witnessed arguments of like, well, no, that is not yours, like that belongs again to Africa, or to here, or to there, or to this, or to that, like, and it's just like,
yeah,
I haven't thing.
I mean, I haven't seen too many of those arguments, so I guess I can't. I remember there was a while when people were talking about, yeah, like Black Americans wearing, using like African textiles, and then there was this one really absurd article that was like, we shouldn't wear head wraps.
I was just about to say head wrap. I was about to say head wraps.
That makes zero sense. But,
like head wraps, and like, why are you guys wearing kente cloth prom dresses? Like I've even seen it go as far as like dreads and braids and cornrows. It's like,
really?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Because what are we supposed to do?
To
just
God.
Like have shaved heads or something like that? I mean, I would think that is the minority of that. I mean, I don't know. What do you think? Because I think, like, I'm hoping that's just like a what's the word? Like a, you know, I don't know, a few that are really loud saying these things, because
I think that, well, number one, I think that there's a common sense of superiority, and I think that it's something like racism, you know, like what is that old fucking saying about like a fish doesn't know what water is, you know, like it's like pervasive, like it's all around, you know, like it's all around, like you don't know what it is almost, because it's just something that's always been done. And then you like realize like, oh shit, that's a fucking microaggression, like that's not cool, or you know, like this happened or that happened. So I think that it's like a really pervasive idea that you know, other people are superior, and I think that you have to be made aware of it. So I don't want to say that everybody's doing it, but I feel like that's like that sense of superiority, or like that idea, even getting into like the idea that we should be ashamed, or like the idea that we don't have shit, or like the idea that we're at the bottom, the idea that like other cultures are real and ours are not, you know, even like getting into what you were saying about like the amount of time, you know, the idea that like, oh, it's like not enough time for it to even be a real culture, you know, or you know, just
I'm not saying it's not enough time.
No, I'm not saying no, I'm not saying that's what you were saying. I'm just talking about like we had talked about like in terms of like time, like you know, years and how long, you know. Oh, like, well, I can trace my lineage back 1,000 years. You can only go back 300. So like my culture is real and your culture is not, you know, like I think there's a lot of like really pervasive ideas that we don't really talk about, and so we don't really think about it. We don't really even, it's just something that's done until somebody says like, I don't know about that. And then you kind of say like, oh yeah, like maybe that is not cool, like maybe that is fucked up, like maybe it is like a sense of superiority, maybe it is a sense of ownership, a sense of like claiming. I don't think it's the minority, because I think it's just like a common, it's just like something that is done until you say something, and then I think people become more aware of it. Now I do think that people are becoming aware, like fucking girl wrote around Black Panther time, the girl wrote the article that said like Black Americans shouldn't wear dashikis to Afropunk and Black Panther. And you had people that said, this is stupid. Like, you know, somebody said, oh, Black Americans shouldn't wear head wraps, or they shouldn't wear kente cloth prom dresses, you know. And I'm sure those people didn't have no ill intent or anything like that, but like they were coming from that mindset already, that framing already of like, you know, their culture is real and ours is not, or they have this ownership over us and our Black American culture that we don't have over theirs, you know, stuff like that. And then somebody had to say, this is dumb, like this is stupid, like you can't tell people they can't wear head wraps, or you know, whatever. So I just think it's an idea that has to be challenged. But I'm not gonna say that it's the minority. I don't. Maybe it's the minority that say it out loud, or write it on the internet.
Yeah.
But I think that most people have those type of thoughts in the back of their head, just that we all have to deal with internalized anti-blackness. Like, none of us can, like, opt out because we're growing up in a racist society. So it manifests in, like, white people, for example, or non-black persons of color as racism. It manifests in us as internalized anti-blackness.
I think totally. I think the relationships between Black Americans and Black diaspora don't feel as like one direction or something to me. What am I trying to say? Like, it doesn't feel just to the same degree the way that, like, I don't know, like the way that white people feel a sense of entitlement to our bodies and to our culture. It doesn't feel the same, because I do think that there is more of a like
an exchange.
Well, I don't even know if I know. It's like a negative exchange, because I do think also, like, Black Americans can get caught up in the ideas that the West portrays about Africa, right? Of it being like some backwards out, like not even knowing that there's, like, I don't know, huge metropolitan cities or whatever, or something, and which, so even though I think I'm aware of, like, some non-African Americans feeling superior. I don't know. I don't even know what I'm trying to say.
It's tough. It's a tough conversation. Well, I kind of want to switch gears. This might sound random, but I did want to ask you this, because you said your father was in the military.
Yeah.
How do you feel about, like, Black people, like Black Americans' relationship to the military, or with the military, or if you even have any thoughts, feelings? Because I know I've seen a lot of people also bring up how Black Americans that are in the military are participating in American imperialism.
I think that on the one hand, I think that, I mean, like, soldiers, right, are participating in imperialism. You know what I mean? And, like, and then also, like, me, when I fucking have a cell phone, you know what I mean? Like, I'm participating. Like, we're all, it's kind of like the air thing. Like, we're all of in this system. Like, I'm anti-capitalist, but also, I don't know, I buy things. I live in capitalism. I buy things, like, it's, like, fucked up. I have a cell phone where, like, fucking children on the continent mined minerals for it in really fucked up conditions, so that I can, like,
have this phone,
have a map wherever I go. You know what I mean? And, like, so we're playing roles in it. I don't think it means that, I don't think it's a reason to, like, demonize anybody, because there's not really getting outside of it unless we are figuring out together how to get outside of it or something. You know what I mean? But I think that, like, a lot of Black and brown people join the military because that's how they're going to go to school.
Yes.
That's how
we have a working poor military. Like,
like, a lot of
military gives options to people with no options.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that, like, for my dad, who came from, like, a really poor family, he got drafted, went to school, went back in the military, because I think it was probably, like, a solid option for making money and trying to, like, be upwardly mobile or whatever, and because that's what we're brainwashed to believe we need to do. You know what I mean? And, like, and a lot of trauma and loss, I think, comes from that. But I'm not gonna be like, I think if there's people who are in the military and they're like, yeah, my country,
like,
I'm like,
patriots.
Yeah, like, fucking people are, like, patriots in the military. I'm like, you're fucked up. You need to think better. You know what I mean? Like, you need better critical thinking skills. Like, I want someone to, like, help you see some shit.
Right.
And I definitely have, like, it's funny, because even though my dad was in the military, I definitely have, like, a knee-jerk reaction to people being in the military that I have to check, because it's a class thing, you know what I mean? It's like, people need that to try to...
They need options.
They need options.
They don't have an option.
So they can go to school, so they can have healthcare, so they can have money, like...
I think that there's also getting into perception, like how you said, for example, that, like, we have a perception that, like, Africa is, like, poor and, like, dirty and backwards. I think a lot of, like, foreign blacks, they have the perception that, like, all of us are, like, rich and we like have all this stuff here, and we like have all this money, and we like have all these opportunities. So I think a lot of them, sticking with like this topic of like imperialism, I think for a lot of them there's even like, it's even hard to understand like why would you join the military? Like why, what do you mean like you don't have options? Like why would you willingly support American imperialism, you know? And then it's kind of like eye-opening to say like, no, like a lot of us are also poor, like a lot, like there's a lot of poor, like the majority of like Black Americans are fucking poor. And I feel like people do not know that. Like they really have this perception of like America as like the land of milk and honey, where we have all these opportunities and we just don't take advantage of the opportunities, and we just don't want to work, and we just like don't want to do this, and we just don't want to do that, and then we just randomly join the military so that we can like oppress people, you know? And it's just like, no, like that's not what it is. And I also feel like even like historically, like Black Americans really have not benefited. And like even how you were just saying like we really don't even like, we don't really benefit from capitalism. Like we don't benefit from, I mean, no one really benefits from capitalism except for like people that are already rich and like at the top. So it's like we don't really benefit from American imperialism like that in a lot of ways. Like Black Americans are really specifically left out of a lot of things in terms of even like government infrastructure and programs and stuff like that. And so it's just like it's weird. Like it's weird. It's like a fucking weird ass space of like perception versus reality, versus the idea of us as Black people, versus the idea of us as American. You know, like a lot of the times it feels like we can't win for losing almost. It's like we're Black, so people gonna hate us because we're Black. Like white people gonna hate us because we're Black. A lot of non-Black persons of color are gonna hate us because we're Black. Like we're Black. Then at the same time, like we are also American. Americans also have a bad fucking rep. Like people gonna hate us because we're American. American imperialism. America fucking squashing the shit out of everybody, which is true. Some bullshit. Like so, it's just like, what do we do? Like what do we do? I don't know. I don't have the answers, Sway.
I don't have the answers. I mean, I think that like, kind of going more specifically to other people's perceptions of, or like other Black people's perceptions of Black Americans, the negative stuff of being like, oh, they're lazy or they're this or that, it's just like, I kind of feel like there's this way, when you read that stuff or like when I've heard that other places or experienced it, to a certain extent I have to think about it the way I do with like when other people are fucked up to Black people, where it's like, okay, I hear that, it hurts, you know what I mean? I hear that, I'm thinking about it, it hurts, and then I have to be like, okay, I have to just be like, okay, fuck you, I don't care, or something. Like I care, but also I don't care. Like
so you don't feel like it makes a difference that they're Black versus other people that are not Black? That
it makes a difference. I'm just saying that like the reaction, the kind of like what do we do in that instance feels like it's like I'm witnessing this, it's fucked up, hurts my feelings, I'm thinking about it, I'm being critical about it, and then I kind of am just like
moving on
to like fucking building, you know what I mean? Like connecting with other Black people who are not on some bullshit, you know what I mean? And like I just need that, for that to be my focus, and not comparing it as being the same thing with like white racism, but similarly, I can only sort of like dwell on the fucked upness of white supremacy for so long. Right. I mean, I'm almost always thinking about it, but I really want to not, you know what I mean? I really want to only think about it for so long and then move on to like building myself up, building other Black people up, like on some positive shit where I'm like, I can't with that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm aware of it, I'm reacting to it, hopefully in ways that are like generative, but I can't just like.
Do you feel like art, it doesn't have to be like even like your art necessarily, Do you feel like art is a good way of... We don't have to talk about the whites and the non-black POCs anymore. They're done. They're canceled.
Yeah.
Do you feel like art is like a good way to kind of like start having conversations within the diaspora and I guess you could say like building bridges or dealing with some of this perception? Or because I know you said like some of your stuff, for example, is like a little bit more abstract.
Yeah.
So you don't always necessarily know like what, if they're getting the message or, you know, like whatever. Like, what do you think is like a good way
to have these conversations? I mean, I think maybe like, oh man, I wish I could remember her name. I was mentioning her. I'm Facebook friends with her. I've never met her in person, and she is Somalian, I think. And I said it quiet because I'm like not sure. But
she's from the continent.
She's from the continent. She's from the eastern part of the continent, and I think she's maybe Canadian. And she's like cool, you know what I mean? Like she's like, I think recognizes. It's weird because there's no unilateral like oppressor or whatever. You know what I mean? From both directions, there's privileges, and from both directions, there's lack and prejudices. And sometimes it feels more to me like we're getting shitted on, and then sometimes it feels more like our privilege as being Americans outshines things or whatever. But like she's on some like, no, other continental black people, don't be fucked up to the Americans. That's busted. That's busted as all fuck.
That's good. So like she speaks up to them.
Yeah, and I think that that's how it's got to be. The same way white people got to talk to white people. I think black people from other diaspora who know what's up and know that it's really fucked up to talk about us like we're shit or like we're lazy or we don't work hard enough. Like they need to talk. They need to collect their folks. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then like I know like for myself, like I can be, even though I'm not experiencing privilege in the way of like a white American or a non-black American, I literally am afraid everywhere I go that someone's gonna call the cops on me. You know what I mean? And like,
especially these days.
Yeah,
like calling the cops for everything.
Yeah, like I literally am like afraid to take up space, and it sucks. And there's so much bullshit here. Despite that, I am sort of like an ignorant American in many ways. You know what I mean? And like, it's not. I don't think it doesn't really make sense to blame myself or feel bad about it, because our country and our school systems and our culture, I think, does that on purpose. You know what I mean? Like, doesn't want us to know what else is going on in the world.
Yeah.
So we don't connect dots and all this kind of shit. But it is on me to try to like learn more about other places and what it's like for people in other places. Because so I guess that's what I think about it, is like they need to collect their people when it's appropriate. We need to collect our people and like learn about other places or some shit. I don't know.
I think that's good. I think that's a good place to end. It's been like an hour and 37 minutes already. Doesn't feel like it, right?
No.
I really like doing this. It's cool. It goes like so fast.
Yeah.